What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Stand Up Guys Podcast, episode 163. I'm your host, Incomparable Zach Jones, joined as always by the man that'll make your panties a soaking wet, the phenomenal AJ Singh.
What's up, everybody?
Well, AJ, the day we've waited for is here. We just saw, hot off the presses, the Ahsoka season 1 finale, and we are going to review that for the good people right now. So anyone who hasn't watched or listened to any of our reviews, we are going to do a deep dive review where we kind of go scene by scene and dissect the entire episode. But AJ, I'm curious, just top level thoughts. Of course, spoilers ahoy in this whole thing. But AJ, just off the top, what do you think of this episode, this finale?
I mean, it was action-packed. I thoroughly enjoyed what I did see, but there was stuff that I didn't get to see that really did bother me too. It frustrated me a little bit.
Yeah, there's that saying that, like, expectations lead to disappointment. Right. And I'm in a similar boat with you. I still like this episode. Like you said, What we got was still entertaining. Mm-hmm. It's just, for my taste, there was still too many questions left unanswered. And like some of them really, like the one we were looking forward to the most, what's the deal with Baylan? We really didn't get that at all, which to me was very disappointing.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, exactly. I did want to know what happens with Baylan. They barely show him even in the episode. It is a little bit frustrating to have to wait, and now we know that the characters have to be recast. So
yeah,
it's I just wish they had left him with like a good solid, big event in this episode. But
yeah, he's basically just in one scene, and it's not even a speaking scene. It's just him looking all like kind of stoic or pissed off. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so that was a little disappointing, but we still got some decent action in this episode. Mm-hmm. We know the fate of the heroes, and we'll get to it, but we did guess correctly in some sense going into this episode, still wrong about some other things. But yeah, still there's definitely, and we'll get into it, even some questions beyond the Baylan stuff that I wish we would have got an answer to that we didn't. But yeah, overall, I'm still sticking with my score for this series overall. I think it's a 7 out of 10. I think it was very solid. It's got room for improvement, but overall, I liked it very much, and I am looking forward to season 2. Even though that might be years from now, depending on when this, actor strike and everything gets and the ball gets rolling again. But no, I still had fun with this. And any thoughts? But any thoughts before we get into the actual review?
Let's get into it.
All right, guys, let's get into this. Is going to be a deep dive. Now, I will say, AJ, this is the first episode of Ahsoka that I've watched like right as it drops. Mm-hmm. And so it just said, usually I say what the episode title is, but like it just said part 8. So like I didn't know if like maybe it takes them like a while to get the episode title in, or if they just didn't name this episode anything in particular. I
know it had a title when I saw it. I don't remember what it was. It was like a reference to something too. I forgot what it was, but yeah.
That's a bummer, because maybe it's just because I use the app on my TV, and maybe for whatever reason it didn't have it.
Okay.
But regardless, all right, let's get into this plot. So AJ, we open up finding out that the cargo they've been transferring, that transfer has been completed. This is another thing. I wanted to find out what this cargo was. That was a big unanswered question. And I'm like, they couldn't at least give us that? Know, if we weren't going to get the Baylan stuff, I would have at least liked to have known this. But we didn't get that. But apparently whatever it is, it has been completed and is on board their ship. And so Thrawn calls for the Eye of Sion to be taken out of high orbit and basically be brought down so that his ship can go inside of it and be attached to it so they can leave. So Enoch tells Thrawn he believes he knows where the Jedi are hiding. So Thrawn sends 2 TIE fighters to search, and he's like, if you find them, engage. So Morgan says there's little the Jedi can do to stop them now. But Thrawn reminds her and warns her that even he fell victim to the heroics of a single Jedi. Of course, he's talking about Ezra and the finale of Rebels. And then he says, never again. So the Great Mothers thank Morgan for her service and give her what they call the gift of shadows. She has to pledge her loyalty and life to the sisterhood and also give up like her past life. She agrees to that. And so the lead witch first kind of burns her face with magic and kind of burns these markings into her skin.
She does some sort of shadow thing to her. I don't know. I think it's something referring to shadow. It seemed like it gave her more abilities later on in the episode.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what all it gave her. Yeah, she called it the gift of shadows. And then after she does that, they conjure this magical sword they call the Blade of Talzin, and they give that to her. But yeah, it's after we find out her fate in this episode, it seems like it didn't help her that much,
Right.
I guess it made her more powerful. Maybe it made her a better fighter too. I don't know if she had those skills already.
I had to assume that because I didn't know she was a fighter at all. she didn't have that kind of that impression on me. She hired mercenaries to help her, and she got caught by Ahsoka in the first episode, or she had already been captured by her. So I didn't really know she was a fighter.
Yeah, same. I don't know if she already had some fighting skills or if this power maybe enhanced or gave her fighting skills, but
right.
You would hope it did something. So now we move over to Ahsoka. So Ahsoka's ship and the Noti people in their little bugmobiles are traveling in a convoy with Ahsoka's ship just a little bit overhead of their ships or their little pods. Ezra scrambles to put together a lightsaber. He's going through all of Hu Yang's parts, and Hu Yang kind of is chastising and be like, you have no method here, you're just rummaging through things. And he's like, who taught you to put together a lightsaber? Right on cue, Sabine shows up and says, Kanan Jarrus, who Kanan Jarrus, he was a main character in the Rebels TV show, voiced by Freddie Prinze Jr., and he was Ezra's master who taught him to be a Jedi.
Was he also what's her name? The general? Was he her husband?
I don't know if they were ever married, but yeah, they were a couple, and he is also the father of that Jason kid.
Okay.
So Hu Yang says he taught Kanan to construct a lightsaber because, Hu Yang's older than hell, and he was taught.
I hate when they don't answer the question. When Ezra asks him, "How old are you?" It's just I want to know, man. Come on.
Yeah, it's they don't want to put a number on it because I don't know, it'd be too precise or something, and all the nerds would be like, this doesn't line up or something. True, I don't know. So Hu Yang gives Ezra the part he needs to complete his lightsaber, which I guess used to belong to Kanan. I feel like they always, in these things, they always want everybody's lightsaber to have some sort of special meaning, Yeah,
right. Because he mentions that one of those parts belonged to Kanan, and he kept the other one for him, but now he's giving it to. It's sentimental, kind of.
The one thing I wonder is the lightsabers work because of what they call kyber crystal, which I think are supposed to be somewhat rare, hard to find. And we know that Ezra gave his saber that he originally had to Sabine, and that's why he's making a new one. But then it's like, did he just happen to have another piece of the Kyber crystal in his pocket? Where did he get that from? Or maybe Hu Yang maybe had it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was just assuming that Hu Yang had it.
That would probably make more sense since he is in the business of teaching young Jedi, I guess.
Yeah.
So Sabine pulls a Batman and she leaves without them noticing. But she leaves, and Ezra asks Hu Yang what happened between Sabine and Ahsoka. Hu Yang says Ahsoka became afraid that Sabine was training as a Jedi for the wrong reasons after what happened on Mandalore. And he explains that the Empire hit the surface of Mandalore, killing thousands of people, including Sabine's family. And Ahsoka thought Sabine could become dangerous due to her grief from that incident. Now, I will say, so in season 3 of The Mandalorian, they go back to Mandalore, and the planet is all messed up. But I don't know if I just missed it in another piece of Star Wars property or whatever, but I didn't realize what happened to it, or apparently the Empire just scorched it or whatever. But
right.
So now Sabine goes out on the wing of the ship, and Ahsoka's meditating on there. Ahsoka tells Sabine that she knows what she did, that she took the gamble on going with Baylan willingly to this planet. Sabine asks if she's mad at her, and she said that she, throughout her lifetime, has had to make many difficult choices that no one understood besides her master, and that Anakin always stood by her side even when no one else would. And she says no matter what happens next, she will be there for Sabine. Ahsoka asks if Sabine's kept up with her training. She says yes, and that she's gotten better with her lightsaber. And Ahsoka says being a Jedi is about more than knowing how to wield a saber, and that Sabine should train her mind and body and trust in the Force. Which we'll see later on in the episode she of course does. I will say one thing about this episode. I liked it, but as we get into it, there's a lot of things that happen that moment to moment I'm kind of predicted would happen. I guess maybe just from seeing other stories and stuff, I'm like the part where it looks like she jumps later on and then she comes back to help Ahsoka. I'm like, oh, right, of course. Yeah. There was just things like that during this episode that I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I saw that coming, in the short term. So Ezra shows up on that wing, and right as he does, those 2 TIE fighters find him. And so they open fire on the ship, and the ship loses its stabilizers and starts falling to the ground. So Ezra and Ahsoka go to the ground, and they basically use the Force to keep the ship in the air so it doesn't come down and crush those little Noti guys underneath.
Here's where I'm how do they have so much power with the Force? Normally Ezra barely pushes somebody with it, and here he is keeping an entire ship up. That's a powerful use of the Force right there.
Yeah, I will say that's one thing about Star Wars and the Force is they can always write it to do what they need it to do. Right. Because even in Force Awakens, Kylo Ren stops a laser shot with it, Mm-hmm. And I think in one of those later, I think somebody even stops a spaceship from taking off, Oh, wow. And so it's that's a lot of power, Yeah. But yeah, they saved the Noti from getting crushed. So Sabine does something in the ship to give it just enough power to fly once more, and she basically just kamikazes into the TIE fighters, right, and just takes them out that way instead of shooting them. But then the ship's out of power and it just nosedives and crashes. So Ahsoka and Ezra run up to the ship. Sabine walks away unharmed, and she just walks up to Ahsoka and goes, "Got him," Ezra says this will slow them down a bit, and Ahsoka says only if they let it. So now back to the bad guys. Enoch tells Thrawn what happened, and he says and Thrawn says it's an acceptable result. Um, Thrawn tells Enoch to prepare for a ground assault now. So now Ahsoka and the team ride their mounts towards Thrawn, while Hu Yang and the Noti repair the ship. Morgan gives a speech to the stormtroopers who volunteer for the ground assault. Now, I thought this was a bit weird because they're like, oh, we got volunteers for the ground assault. But knowing like Thrawn the way he is, I wouldn't even think he would ask for volunteers. I would just think he would be like, hey, you guys, you're going out there.
Yeah, I'm a little like I'm seeing Thrawn for the first time here, but he doesn't seem like a pure jerk because he even like notified these. He said, "Did you tell them of the circumstances?" Basically, like,
Right.
did you like do they know that they're going to be stranded here, or they might die, or whatever?
Yeah, like the best case scenario would be they're stranded, but like
yeah,
a good chance they'll die.
yeah, but it's like he wants them to know what they're signing up for, and that didn't seem like the kind of Thrawn I was expecting. I was expecting like a heartless kind of, just do what needs to be done kind of, commander.
Yeah, you would think he would be a little more cutthroat than that, right?
Yeah.
Or he gives off that impression. But she tells Thrawn that like, yeah, like they're okay with the sacrifice, for you. And Thrawn says, it's not for me, it's for the Empire. So the team gets close to Thrawn's ship. So he orders that hellfire be rained upon them. He says there will be no negotiating with the apprentice of Anakin Skywalker. I do notice that he comes back to that a lot. That whole thing about like he knew who Anakin was, and so that makes him, very kind of either afraid of Ahsoka or just like, well, yeah, I think it makes him a little more scared of what she's capable of.
Yeah, it seems like it to me. She's unpredictable, I suppose.
So now they fire up the old turbo lasers,
and they just can't hit anything with these things.
I know. I wrote the team somehow dodged these turbo laser blasts, which really is a miracle. I mean, even like, let's say the Force kind of helps them somehow predict the path of lasers and stuff. Like, is it really working enough that they could dodge all those blasts? Like, it seems not very likely.
I mean, I don't know how many guns were shooting at them, but you would think one of them might hit them,
I mean, it was a lot. Yeah. Yeah. Explosions all around them, but they're fine. And not only that, like, they have to make it inside this fortress and the door is shut. So Ahsoka's like, help me, like, use the Force to open this door, like, even you, Sabine. So, like, all three of them are using the Force to try to open this large door while they're getting shot at. So it's like, even if the Force helps them, like, dodge those lasers, it's like at the same time, you'd think they have to use almost all their concentration just to open that door. So It's like, again, the Force does what it needs to do to advance the story. We do see that Thrawn is like visibly upset and maybe even a little nervous that they made it through the door.
Right.
And so he says to dispatch the night troopers. He says he will inform the Great Mothers that it's time. So now we get an action scene where the team make it into this fortress. They're confronted by a squad of stormtroopers. And they basically just kind of, wreck shop. Sabine uses her blasters. The other two use their sabers. And they just, like, cut through these guys pretty easy. I will say, I thought this action scene was decent. But I think we've been spoiled by things like John Wick, where the choreography is, like, so tight. And then you see something like this, and you're like, well, it's not bad. But it's not John Wick. You know what I mean?
Right. I was like, this action could have been a little bit better, but I know they have to use their lightsabers and the Force a certain way, so maybe that's what is the reason for that. But yeah, comparing this to John Wick, it's a night and day difference.
Right. So the Great Mothers begin to chant, and this causes the stormtroopers to come back to life. And we kind of see that like green smoke, like we did with, I believe his name was Merrick in that
Right.
episode before. So apparently they have the ability to control the dead and like make zombies. So the zombie troopers, these stormtroopers come back to life, and these zombie troopers force the team upstairs in this fortress. Eventually, they are able to close the doors and kind of section off the zombies away from them. So Thrawn's ship attaches to the Eye of Sion, and Morgan tells Thrawn they are ready to depart. Thrawn says that they need more time to ensure the Jedi don't get on the ship. And so Morgan says she understands and is, I wrote, seemingly ready to sacrifice herself if need be, or at least be left behind. So like,
Right.
just like those other stormtroopers, she's like, for the Empire, she's all in on this cause, and she's ready to fight for it. So Ahsoka and the team make it up to where Morgan is. And Ahsoka says she'll handle Morgan while Ezra and Sabine go to stop Thrawn. So Morgan and Ahsoka begin to fight. And I at least thought their sword choreography was decent.
Yeah.
And Ezra and Sabine end up getting in a fight with those, what I assume are those night troopers that Thrawn ordered.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys, I've never seen these guys in any other like Star Wars stuff. But again, they end up also kind of being like zombie troopers, because Ezra like stabs one of them like through the middle with his saber, but like it does nothing. Right. And like, so these guys initially end up getting like the upper hand in this fight. While they're fighting, Thrawn begins to fire up the Eye of Sion. So now Sabine is, and again, this was all foreshadowed kind of, we knew that Sabine was eventually going to get better with the Force, and she does. So she's able to get use the Force to grab her lightsaber off the ground. And I guess these, zombies go by the same rule as every other zombie. You got to get them in the brains, man.
Right.
So she puts it through the zombie's trooper's head, and he dies. Ezra does the same thing. He calls his sword and like cuts off the head of the other one. So Ezra and Sabine kind of get to the edge of a platform, and like Thrawn's ship is getting away, and it's seemingly like too late for them to get on board Thrawn's ship. So now the zombie troopers that they had sectioned off in the basement, they escape, and they make their way up to where Ahsoka and Morgan are fighting. And this causes Ahsoka to kind of have to retreat and back up the stairs to where now Ezra and Sabine are. And like the whole time she's like deflecting the stormtrooper bolts, So Sabine gets the idea of like having Ezra jump, and she's going to force push him onto Thrawn's ship so he can cover that, large distance. And I'm like, right. Ezra, knowing what he knows about Sabine, like he really has some faith in her.
Huge risk. She barely called her lightsaber a minute ago, and that took everything. And now she's going to force push him from like 50 feet away.
If I was him, I would have been like, you know what? How about you jump, and I'll force push you.
Yeah. I mean, the way she did it too, she pretty much like floated him onto the platform. Like, she kind of lifted him up. Like, that took a lot.
Yeah. I thought it was going to be more of a thing where like he jumps and then she instantly like pushes just to give him like,
a boost.
Boost. But he like jumps and she waits for him to start falling, and then she's like, okay, woo, and then like, pushes him the rest of the way. But I'm like, wasn't the smoothest it could have been.
Right.
But it works, and it gets Ezra onto the ship. So Sabine is about to jump, but then she sees Ahsoka in trouble. But then it makes it look like she like seemingly jumps onto Thrawn's ship. But this is another thing where I'm like, oh, this is easy to predict
Right.
that she didn't actually jump.
Mm.
Um, um, so now Morgan and Ahsoka fight some more. Morgan destroys one of Ahsoka's sabers, and I wrote, the troopers stupidly stop shooting at Ahsoka. Like, they're just all in this circle just watching.
Right.
Like they could have easily killed her here. I mean, I guess their only excuse is like, oh, maybe they would have accidentally hit Morgan, but I was like, this seems stupid on their part.
I mean, this kind of reminds me of I think it was the last episode or maybe the one before that where Ezra, like, they're about to shoot him. Shin's like, kill them, destroy them. And Ezra's like, wait, let's talk for a second. Maybe you can take us as prisoners.
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
Why wouldn't they shoot him?
I feel like this happens in a lot of like fiction and Star Wars especially, where it's like, yeah if they would have just like done their jobs. So Thrawn's ship starts leaving, and Morgan tells Ahsoka she's all alone. But dun dun dun, turns out Sabine didn't jump after all. So Sabine starts taking out the stormtroopers while Ahsoka takes out Morgan, and Ahsoka actually ends up like killing her, like slicing her right across the middle. The Great Mother sense that, and they tell Thrawn that Morgan is dead, and he says she did what was required. Which, I'm okay with her dying, but since they did have this whole pomp and circumstance in the beginning of bestowing her with this power and this special sword, a part of me wishes like they would have done more with Morgan overall and maybe actually let her survive this season. And like, maybe. But I guess maybe somebody had to die.
Yeah.
So Thrawn orders his men to destroy the fortress because, he knows Ahsoka's on there. So Ahsoka and Sabine are forced to jump off the fortress. And this is another predictable thing where I'm like, well, I know Hu Yang's going to be there to save them,
Yeah.
And of course, Hu Yang was there. The ship was repaired, and they land on the ship, and they're fine. So now Ahsoka pursues Thrawn in her ship, but Thrawn opens up a channel to talk to her.
Well, let's not leave out that Thrawn ordered the temple to be destroyed, but they're shooting only at the temple, not the ship, like, at all. Like, the ship comes up to save Ahsoka and them, and they get on the ship and they leave, but the whole time they're just shooting at the temple. They don't even try to aim at the ship.
That's a very good point, and I didn't even think of that. But you're right. I mean, they have sophisticated radar. They always like know where the Jedi ship is, so they would be able to see that. So you're right. Another thing of like bad guys being stupid and not doing their job, they should have just shot the ship out of the sky, and they would have been good. So yeah, definitely some plot holes in this episode. Anyway, Thrawn tells Ahsoka that he's won this day, and that perhaps this place is where a Ronin like her belongs. And I guess, I don't know if you've gotten to it yet in The Mandalorian, and it might actually be season 2 anyways, but Ahsoka does debut in the Mandalorian series, and the episode she's in definitely has the feel of like a samurai type movie kind of, and so I do kind of like that they're playing with that theme, that she's kind of like this masterless Ronin samurai type. I do enjoy that.
Yeah.
But then Thrawn kicks in the hyperdrive, and he goes into hyperspace, and they are too late to catch up with him. So Ahsoka and Sabine go back to the planet. They go back to the Noti people. Ahsoka sees like a owl type bird, which I remember from Rebels has some sort of significance. I don't know exactly what that is, or if it's just like, oh, maybe like Anakin's Force ghost is kind of watching it over her through that bird or something.
I saw like a breakdown of I think it was Rebels, and somebody mentioned that the daughter, the father, the son, and the daughter, the Immortus gods, I guess, the owl kind of represents the daughter.
Oh, okay.
And I think Ahsoka was once going to die in Rebels, and the owl saved her. It might have sacrificed itself to save her. I'm not sure, something like that.
Well, so I remember in that episode where the Ezra goes to the Jedi Temple, and he goes into that place beyond between worlds or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
So there is like a mural on the wall that does have like the father, the son, and the daughter, and like they end up like moving that picture in some way that opens up the portal that allows him to go into that place between worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he finds Ahsoka, like that owl is like above like the portal that he grabs Ahsoka out of. So it does have some sort of significance. I'm just not exactly sure what. We see Shin lights her saber in front of a group of those nomad people, I think indicating that basically she's going to be the leader of those people going forward.
Yeah, why? Why are those her people now? She barely knows them.
I mean, I assume like she's just gonna in the next season gonna need like an army that's loyal to her in some way,
Yeah.
And then we get the one and only scene of Balin here. He's standing on the fist of like a giant statue, looking over things. Like again, I don't know if this statue is a Jedi statue, a witch-made statue, if that has any significance in what his overall plan is. But yeah, I got to say, I'm very disappointed that we didn't get more of him in this episode.
Yeah, just some resolution as to what he's doing,
Yeah, I would have liked to
reveal it.
Yeah, agreed. I think they really should have set that up in this season.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's one of those things, they wrote themselves into a thing and they're like, we need more time to figure this out. We'll set it up, but we need more time to actually think it over.
Right.
So Enoch tells Thrawn that they are approaching Dathomir. And now we get a scene. I should have said, there was a short scene where, like, when Ezra was on the back of Thrawn's ship, like one of the guards he took down got a call, and they're like, we'll be there to investigate or something. And he says, okay. And then he says, like, thanks for letting me know you're coming. So we don't see it, but we presume, and then he carries that body off. So we kind of presume that he was getting into that stormtrooper's suit, even though we don't see it. But anyway, a ship shows up at Home One, the base of the New Republic where Hera is. And Stormtrooper comes out, and so they all put their guns up. But of course, it is Ezra, and Hera looks, kind of shocked to see him. So now back on Peridia, Ahsoka tells Sabine she did a good job, and that both Ezra and them are where they need to be. Ahsoka says it's time to move on. And then Sabine, looks like she feels something weird. And Ahsoka's like, what is it? And she says, oh, nothing, just shadows in the starlight. Mm-hmm. And then Ahsoka, kind of looks out in the distance for a while, and then she turns around. And then we see the Anakin's Force ghost was looking after them, and it kind of gives a smile. So we assume, that Sabine was able to tap into the Force and sense his presence.
Right. And that kind of, we weren't sure before what Anakin was. Maybe it was just something in Ahsoka's mind. But this kind of leads to the idea that he really is like a Force ghost. He really is there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it was kind of up in the air from that one episode where she was having all the visions of and still, I guess, I don't know if that was technically his Force ghost there, or I assume it was, but, I don't know, in that place between worlds, maybe it was just a mystical vision. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But yeah, now we know that, his ghost was looking after her.
Mhm.
Well, AJ, we were kind of right. We thought the heroes would be stranded on this planet. 2 out of 3 anyway. I
Yeah.
guess Ezra did make it. Um, so I see like the setup for season 2 now is going to be like you got to imagine they're going to still spend some time on this planet because Shin and Balin are still there,
Right.
and Ahsoka and Sabine are still there. Shin's got her army of nomads, and you got to figure Balin's going to be putting, whatever his plan is into effect. And then on
Mhm.
the other side of, or back to the original galaxy, you got Thrawn setting up the Empire again, and you got Hera and Ezra, doing, I assume, setting up to, prepare to fight Thrawn in some way.
Mhm.
Um, and then maybe towards the end of that season, we finally get Ahsoka and Sabine and everybody, back to the original galaxy. I don't know. Um,
Yeah, I think that's what season 2 is going to be all about, like their survival in that in that environment and dealing with Shin and whatever Balin's up to. I'm sure he's going to release some sort of great power that they have to like figure out, how to traverse it, how to deal with it, how to avoid it. I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, I think that's what it's come down to.
I do kind of wonder if the next season of The Mandalorian will tie in Thrawn in some way. I imagine it'll have at least some, crossover.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I don't know for sure, but like if they're gonna lead up to like a movie eventually, I would think that the next season of The Mandalorian would deal maybe with Thrawn's arrival in some way, or like maybe Thrawn is throwing some kind of enemies in their path, or something like that.
Right, yeah. I can see that.
But yeah, I mean, overall, this finale, mixed feelings. I would have, liked more answers, but I guess that's the thing with storytelling is you got to leave people wanting more in some respect.
Mhm.
Um, the only thing is like I feel like if I knew Balin's plan, I would actually be even more interested in season 2,
Yeah,
rather
exactly.
than like them leaving me totally in the dark. Like I'm still interested, but I think if we would have got a glimpse of his plan, I would be even more invested in seeing season 2. Even more.
Yeah, I buy into your theory. I think they don't know what they're going to do yet. I think they just set up something big and they're like, "What we got to figure out what's going to be that thing," Like they don't
You
know
know,
yet.
shows really shouldn't write themselves that way, but I think a lot of them do. And like
Yeah.
sometimes it works out really well, and like sometimes you come back and you're like, oh boy, they didn't think of the thing they thought they were going to think
Right.
of, did they? So we'll see how it pans out. But yeah, my final score for this is going to be a 7 out of 10, just as it was from the first episode. I thought it was a solid season. What about you?
Yeah, I got to go 7 out of 10. It's been consistent all the way through. And honestly, I think the episodes got better and better as they went along.
Yeah, yeah, I don't really have any complaints. I mean, um, I think there was some episodes that maybe were light on action, but that's okay. You can have those episodes once in a while that are more dialogue focused and setting things up, and then ones like this that kind of pay off and have a little more action in them. And I was
Right.
glad that both this episode and the last episode had a little more action in them, and I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also like I thought all the throughout this season, and same with the Mandalorian, really, I think the special effects are pretty good. I didn't really notice anything that every once in a while, like even in Marvel movies, Marvel, even more in Marvel TV shows, you'll see something and be like, "Ooh, that could have used a
Yeah.
little more time in the kitchen." But
Right.
I thought all the effects in the show actually looked pretty good. I didn't really bump up against anything.
I thought so too. I wonder why the effects are so much better in this show compared to some other shows. Is it just budget?
Yeah, I think it mostly comes down to just time and money. So I've heard some stories of like certain effects houses working on like Marvel properties where like they just don't have the time to turn around on certain
Right.
things. And so, which really for Marvel, I don't think is really in Disney an excuse, because like, even if they have to delay something to make it look better, they got the money to do that,
Right. Yeah.
and so I think they, should take their time, even if it means delaying a series. I would rather, I think that it, look better.
Right. Agreed.
But AJ, any final thoughts before we wrap up this episode?
Looking forward to season 2. I just can't wait to see what Balin's up to.
Same. All right, guys. Well, if you will, comment down below and tell us what you thought about this season overall, and what you're looking forward to in season 2. And besides commenting, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. That helps us out a lot. Leave us 5-star reviews if you will. And also you can subscribe in audio form on your podcast catcher of choice. I'm still over on the hellscape known as Twitter /X at Zach Jones Live, ZachJonesLive. But that is going to do it for all of our shenanigans and poppycock this week. Please tune in again next week. Bye, guys.
Take care.